Welcome to another episode of the Inquisitive Analyst. I'm your host, Marcus Utakang. It's the show where we chat with business analysts and project managers about their challenges and triumphs, their trials and tribulations, ideas, and of course, contribution to their field. It's inspiring and it's upbeat, and of course, well, it's inquisitive. My guest today is an IT marketing business analyst manager. He has a passion for process improvement and efficiency. He runs a website called the Meta Business Analyst, and of course, a YouTube channel as well on business analysis tips and tricks. Please help me welcome to today's show, Angelo Kalevela. Welcome, Angelo.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'll start off with a few questions, if I can, Angelo, about you. And you have sort of an intriguing background because you weren't the accidental business analyst like many of us were. You initially planned to become a BA from the start, and you did so right out of university. So can you summarize for us some of those steps that you took to become a business analyst?
Sure. And I think you're partially right there, actually. I would say some people in the IT field fall into business analysis later in their career. I just accidentally fell into it right out of college. In university, my major was management information systems. And while I was, there getting my education, most of my extracurriculars were totally outside of IT. So I wasn't like programming websites for everybody in the community or anything like that. I did do that a little bit actually, but those weren't the main things on my resume. Most of the things on my resume were like, captain of this, I was dancing, I was a stage performer, and all these, different things, kind of working on my interpersonal skills, not specifically for like resume building, but just because they were things that I was passionate about in college. And when I was finishing school and starting the interview process for different things, the title of business analyst wasn't one that was well communicated to me for my major. So I wasn't even super familiar with the title itself. But there's a lot of like entry level, like graduate, people hiring new graduates and all that. So as I was going through that process, it started coming up more. And in one interview, the position that they kind of threw out there was kind of like a general software engineering kind of position. So within the job description, you could have ended up being a DBA, you could have ended up being a junior project manager. Like it was very wide. And when I asked, where do I fit? And they're like, we don't think you fit anywhere in here. We think you should do this other thing called business analysis. And, when somebody's like, hey, you applied for this job, but I think you would actually really excel in this other job, it makes you like really consider it, right? Because in most cases, they're like, if you don't fit this resume, why are you in the room? Or this job description, why are you in the room? And they were like, no, we think you're great for something else. And that kind of made me feel like, am I really good for, for this position? Maybe this is the route I should start with, since these people are saying I will be successful. So that's really kind of how it started for me. I didn't know the job title, but I was sold the job title based on my skill set at the time. Nice.
Well, it looks like you made a good choice after all. And your
I'm
website,
happy with it.
Well, I'm happy with it too, because then I get to have you on my show. It's pretty good. Now your website's actually called the Meta Business Analyst. What is a Meta Business Analyst?
Great question. So when I started that website, it was actually because I had just gone through my BA certification. I just got my first certification. And, I spent a lot of time studying for it and whatnot. And I was kind of afraid that like, if I didn't kind of find some way to like keep the information fresh, I would forget everything I learned essentially, which isn't really the case, but that was my fear at the time. So I was like, let me create some way that like will keep me like going on like this information. So I was like, let me start a website. And the original idea was actually business analysis in real life. I don't exactly remember what made me decide definitively not to go with that. But the idea of a meta business analyst to me was, while I was working and kind of learning the profession, one thing that I was seeing a lot in my own workplace was I was working with a team of business analysts, and we were our jobs were to help all these other business units be better, make their processes more efficient, make their data better, like just make their lives easier, if you will. But we never did it for ourselves. Like nobody on our team ever sat down and said, are our processes good? Are we doing the best we could do as business analysts? How can we be more efficient? And I was like, why aren't we doing that? It's literally our job. We're doing it for everybody else. Why don't we do it for ourselves? So it kind of like went with that. So the business analyst for a business analyst is kind of what the meta business analyst is. It's like business analysis for ourselves. Are we thinking about our own profession, our own career, our own processes in the same way that we do for other departments or divisions or industries that we're working for. So that's kind of how the name came to be.
Nice. Actually, I must say, talking about helping other business analysts, it certainly helped me. I was thinking about doing a portfolio. In fact, I'd done portfolios in the past, and I didn't have good luck with them. I was going through your website. What do I see? A whole slew of portfolios. And I thought, well, you know what? If Angelo's doing it and it worked for him, maybe I should start doing it again. So anyway, thanks for helping me out. Is basically what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's look at another side of business analysis: requirements traceability metrics. What's a simple and effective way to manage a requirements traceability matrix?
There's a lot of different ways, and I think it's kind of evolved for me because in a waterfall environment where you have like huge programs, it becomes extremely important to make sure that things are traced, and it's one of those things where it's like a kind of diminishing returns kind of thing. Like if you trace it to an nth degree, that it's so specific, so detailed, like your whole job is just going to be tracing requirements. You're not going to have time to do anything else. But if you're a little too slack with it, you're going to be missing stuff. So there's like a happy medium somewhere, and it's not a perfect science, I would say. But it's much more important when you have cross-functional teams who aren't in every meeting, and you have leaders and management who have to make sure things are happening and things aren't being missed. And that's really when it's most important, because there's 5 teams, not everybody's on every call. People need to make sure things are getting done, and it's usually to track the life cycle of kind of a project, right? So when you start with the business requirements, they're a little bit high level, and then you get to the requirements, you're getting a little bit deeper, and depending on how your organization kind of divides that, you might have functional requirements, which are kind of like what the system needs to do, and then you might get the design requirements, which are like how it's actually going to do it. And sometimes the BA is involved, sometimes you have a systems analyst or an architect or a solution architect doing something like that, depending on how it falls. But you want to make sure, no matter which way you're looking at it, if you have a business requirement, you're able to say, all right, which functional requirements are meeting this? So you can quickly see all those functions and say, are you happy with how those functional requirements are meeting that business requirement? And then on down the line, are the design requirements meeting your functional requirements? And then on down the line, do you have test scenarios, test cases for all of these, functional and design requirements? And then vice versa, when you're building this requirement, does it actually meet the original business requirement? Like, did we just make something up? Are we, gold plating? Do we really need to do this to meet our original business objective? So it's kind of that back and forth of conversation to make sure, are we doing the right things, and are we complete in what we've done? And in terms of managing it, it really depends on kind of your tool set and what you're comfortable doing. Most people do it in Excel. Excel is not the best tool to do it, but Excel is something everyone's going to have. Everyone has at least like a degree of knowledge on how to use Excel. So for those reasons, Excel gets used a lot. But even using something like a SharePoint list, or like something like Jira, where you can include different fields to kind of link things together. Those I think are a little bit more robust, because you could probably do a little bit more data analysis if you're not like an Excel wizard. But really, as long as it's documented and everybody can get to it and understand it, like that's you're adding the value.
Yeah, no, I think you've explained it very, very well. Thank you. Interviews. I've always thought when I'm in an interview, I'm interviewing the company as much as they are interviewing me, because do I really want to work for these folks? And do they also want me to work for them? So the dreaded typical interview question, we all have heard it before. Tell me about yourself. What's a great way to tackle this question during an interview?
Sure. I would say, in my opinion, and obviously my opinion is how I would want somebody to hire me and how I would hire people, but there are people who are different from me. So my opinion isn't like the one way it should be done. But in my opinion, you should focus on your journey, whatever your journey has been up until that point. Like, for me, it would be my career journey. If you're a new graduate, it could be your journey through different work experiences or volunteer experiences or academia. But the things that you've been passionate about, the things that you've been successful about, to kind of give them a good idea of why you would be a successful person. Or another way to say that is that you understand the value you bring to the table. And also like what knowledge you actually have. And part of that is also, if you're passionate about a specific style of work or a specific thing, then people can see that and hear that in the way that you're speaking to them, and can understand how you can bring that passion into their organization. Or maybe that your passions wouldn't fit well and you might be miserable in that organization, which is something you would kind of want them to know too, and kind of not hire you. You don't want them to hire you just because, and then you hate it there. They're unhappy with you because you're unhappy there. So it really is an opportunity to actually tell them about yourself, and not kind of, only say the best things and the things you think they want to hear. You should be really about you, and you should really be essentially speaking from the heart and talking about who you really are and what things drive you, the things that you've done in your workplace that made you super excited, the things that you hope to achieve based off of, experiences you've had. Like, you should really let them know, and try not to be afraid that what you say will be like not exactly what they had in mind, because if it's not, you actually don't want them to hire you.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Very much indeed. I think you spelled that out really, really well. One way to elicit good requirements as a business analyst is to ask the right questions. We're always told to ask the right questions. How does one learn how to ask the right question, first of all? And secondly, what types of requirements questions should BAs be asking?
Sure. I would say there's two ways essentially to get to the point where you're asking the right questions. One is to have experience in that area, right? Which is something that you can't make up like on the spot, right? If you don't have the experience, you don't have the experience. There's nothing you could do about it. So barring that, the next best thing for you to do is learn how to model spaces. By that, I mean process models, data flow diagrams, concept maps, things like that, things that force you to have to understand the processes to a certain degree, which means that if you don't understand it to that degree, you have more questions that you need to ask to get to that level of understanding, right? So, and I think a lot of times when you're an inexperienced business analyst and you're in the room with an experienced business analyst, so they've kind of seen all the failure points, they know all the different things, so they know all the right questions to ask. But the reason they know that is because they already have the process in their head, and they're mapping it in their head, and therefore they know those questions to ask. Like a simple example is, if you're trying to gather requirements for a process that has like a check, a validation of some kind, right? Like, if it's, let's say, selling alcohol, and you have to be 21 to buy alcohol. If the process says check if they're 21, right? If they're 21, the next step is allow them to purchase it. But by documenting that, you're forcing yourself to see that there's another path when they're not 21. What happens then, right? And then you now know to ask what happens when they're not 21, right? So that forcing yourself to model it helps you ask better questions, because you're essentially asking them to help you make a complete and accurate model for you. And the questions are just you asking them to do that for you. And then it kind of takes away the need for you to have like all this experience that you're not going to be able to have until you have, right? So modeling requirements like data flows are also another great one to say, all right, this information is flowing here. Who's using it? Why? What happens if that information doesn't come through? Those are three questions that immediately will come just by knowing a field is coming through, right? So modeling is your best friend to help you get complete requirements and ask better questions.
Yeah, it gives you that good visual pictorial sort of demonstration of the path from here to there. Yeah, that's good. Can you explain can you explain why non-functional requirements are so important for business analysts like ourselves to know? And why should we really know non-functional requirements?
Yeah. The short of it is, if you don't consider them, your application, your solution could be an absolute failure. Most non-functional requirements, are the how of things, right? So they're like, legal requirements or statutory requirements, they're usability requirements. They might be like regulatory requirements, scalability and maintainability. And these are all things that when you're thinking, oh, does the thing do the thing it's supposed to do? Yeah, sure, it does. But if it breaks, can anybody fix it? No. Is it likely to break? Yes. Then you have a solution that's not going to work very well for very long. Is it scalable? Today the cup could hold, a cup, but tomorrow we're definitely going to need to be able to hold 2 cups worth of water. Again, you failed. If it's not usable, like if the cup is made out of metal and it's for hot things, then nobody can hold it. Your cup is an absolute failure, right? If your cup is made out of like lead or something and it's poisoning people, it's a failure. If your cup using a legal substance, total failure, and you can't use it. So non-functional requirements actually make sure that the whatever you're building is going to work for whatever you need it to work for. And obviously if like something's illegal, you can't use it. And illegal, isn't like criminal necessarily, but like making sure you're following regulations like, Sarbanes-Oxley, or if it's a medical system, it's following HIPAA guidelines and things like that. And now we have GDPR. So knowing those things will help you. And in truth, what will end up happening is you'll get to the point to testing probably, or maybe even about to go live and somebody will remind you, hey, did you look into this? And you're gonna say, oh crap. And then now you have to, move deployment back because you have to kind of rethink and change something. So it's going to cause rework. It's not going to be like a total like, zero. Now you start all over. It's just, there's going to be some rework. It's going to cost the company money to do that rework. And you're there to kind of help them not have to do that.
Nice, sweet. I like the way you explain things. It's a very simple, easy way to understand, and the audience can just digest that and go back and learn more and want to learn more.
Sure, that's really partially good. Because my audience is mostly people just getting into the profession, so I can't use jargon because they'll have no idea what I'm talking about. And they haven't worked for a large organization, so they don't understand the true pain of working in a large organization and being a business analyst. So I have to relate it to things that I would hope people would know and understand and could get without having to look something up or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, with giving the example, I think really adds so much more value to it because they can now visualize what you're talking about. So that's quite good too.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's look at a bit of Agile for a moment. Everyone likes Agile. Agile this, Agile that. It's almost like the next thing since sliced bread. What are some takeaways that business analysts can learn from doing an Agile sprint?
I would say to me, the most valuable thing about doing Agile is that you get to practice your BA skills much more rapidly. When you're doing waterfall and you're doing like one project at a time, and it's this big project, you're going to build one big process model, and then you're not going to do it again for months until the next big project, right? Whereas when you're doing Agile, you might have to do a process model, a user story, a use case, this, that, a data model. And it just every sprint, you have new requirements and new things that you have to look at. So it allows you to kind of cycle through all your business analysis skill sets much more rapidly. And therefore, it gives you better practice, as long as you know to be doing them also. That's another thing. Because in waterfall, it kind of really spells out exactly what you have to do. In Agile, you just have to know, okay, well, we have this new process that's going to change the process. I should probably model that to make sure we're not breaking anything, right? So you have to know, because it may not be spelled out for you to be doing those activities, but if you know to do them, you'll do them more often, you'll revisit it more often. So you get to kind of reflect on your skill set, find your weaknesses much faster, build upon them much faster. So I think from an Agile perspective, that's the one benefit I've seen in working and having worked, for several years in waterfall and then switching to Agile. I actually like it significantly more, even though the BA role is much more concretely defined in waterfall.
Yeah, I was noticing that too. But so your learning curve is just it's much quicker. Basically, you're getting up down that learning curve much quicker with Agile because you're doing more things more frequently. So there's more ability to learn and pick up at a faster rate. Cool. Let's talk about business rules. Business rules. I think business analysts, a lot of us tend to work with them. Some of us work with business rules, some of us don't. What's the best way to use business rules in business analysis?
Yeah. So one, I would say all business analysts work with business rules. They just sometimes don't define them as business rules. So like if you go back to my example with the, being 21 to purchase alcohol, that's a business rule that's just documented in the form of a gate in a business process, right? But that's a rule, right? You have to be 21 to buy alcohol, and therefore you go this way or that way on the process model. So we all have them, and it's going to depend on, I would say, the nature of your organization, right? So some organizations are heavily built upon rules, and it's much more important for them to document those rules independently of processes, because processes can change all the time. Systems can change all the time and be updated, but like the rules are critically important to the nature of the business. And I would, if off the top of my mind, I would say HR is one of these places where, when you consider hiring and all the things that go into hiring, and when you consider like international hiring and taxes and all these rules and regulations about employment and all of these things, like they have a lot, and they're probably one of the most regulatory of like the standard like business divisions, right? So they have to really make sure like they're understanding all the rules, because they're potentially going to get sued all the time if they're not. So in that space, being able to document all the different business roles in a way that people can kind of reference quickly and understand quickly and know when they apply to their processes is critically important. In my own space, which most of my career has been in sales and marketing, I actually have worked with HR like briefly here and there when they kind of like intersect, but for the most part, we're mostly focused on processes, right? It's not a heavy business rules space. And for me, my introduction to business rules was when I was studying for the certification. I kind of learned what it is and kind of played with it and documenting and things like that. And when I, teach people about documenting requirements, I include it because it could help them a lot in their space if they're in a rule heavy environment. But I personally haven't used them as much as I think some other industries could benefit from them.
Yeah, I worked with a company, a software company, and they actually called our roles a technical business analyst because we had to program business rules into the database. It was the database was heavily involved with, so usually the developer would do those business rules or program them. But now they gave this job to business analysts. I thought, programming, I don't do this stuff. So you had to learn, you had to work a lot with the developers, but you had to learn how to program these business rules into database tables, which is kind of interesting. That's the only time I ever had to do it that way. So
interesting.
Yeah, it was way back. So you say an epic business analyst, and you're from Atlanta, and I was going to say Atlanta's an epic city, but anyway, so you say an epic business analyst should treat an issue as a puzzle. So first of all, what's an epic business analyst, and second of all, why do you recommend that BAs treat an issue as a puzzle?
Sure. So the idea of an epic business analyst really came, the language was really just more of like, epic is just a cool word to use now, and that it's a pretty like contemporary, but there was some reason behind it, and it was because I read a study from IAG, which is a consultant, like a business analysis consulting company, and long story short, it basically said if you're just a average mediocre business analyst, you're probably causing a lot of rework and not doing the best job. You have to kind of in your mind tell yourself that you're going to be an exceptional business analyst if you really want to be effective and great in the profession and be really somebody that like, I don't want to say matters, but the person, like if there's a room of people who all say they're business analysts and some of them are average and some of them are exceptional, you're going to go for the exceptional ones, right? Because they're the ones who you could throw on a project and you can feel confident that they're not going to need a lot of hand holding. They're going to get it done. They're going to ask the right questions, and they're going to dig a little deeper. And so that was kind of the idea behind an epic business analyst. Like you shouldn't just phone it in. And I think you alluded to this a little bit in the beginning when you said a lot of people accidentally fall into business analysis, meaning there's a need for the activities to happen, but you're not a trained business analyst, right? And therefore you're kind of falling into that role with whatever knowledge you came from, whether you're coming from a developer or a project manager or from the business or whatever it may be. And there's no, if you don't have a clear kind of idea of, if you're going to be an epic business analyst, these are the activities you're going to do. You're kind of just going to do whatever activities maybe feel right or fall into your lap, and you're not going to have like a real framework for the activities that you're doing. And then you're going to end up doing like a kind of mediocre job versus somebody who is a trained business analyst is going to come and say, all right, based on the things you said, we need to create an end-to-end process model. We need to have the data flows for these places where like, and you're going to be thinking about, the activities in those ways. And then relative to it being a puzzle, the idea is there was kind of to think about it as like a game, right? And when I say game, I don't mean that it's not serious. I mean, when people play games, they put a lot of passion into like getting it done, right? Like, and when you consider a puzzle, like if you were to spell it out plainly on what the activity is, it's like you're putting a bunch of pieces of cardboard together that look almost the same, and it's going to be super tedious and it's going to take you forever and it's going to be really tiring. Like that sounds ridiculous and awful. Nobody would sign up to do that, but people love doing puzzles because it's challenging and you're excited about finding that one little piece that's missing. And so you should approach business analysts the same way, like not like this tedious set of tasks, but that you're the one who's here to solve this puzzle, right? And no one's going to be able to solve it without you. So like help them get there. Or another way to think about it is like a detective, right? Like you're like, I'm here to solve this crime. Like I'm going to put all the pieces together to get to, I mean, detective is kind of negative because crime is like a bad thing. Positive, but like, you get the idea. Like you're kind of creating this challenge for you to solve. And then it becomes more exciting to you, more fun. You feel more passionate about getting it done versus like this tedious set of activities that you just have to like get through so you could get your paycheck. And then you'll perform better and your, company will like you more and all of those things.
They should call you like a Sherlock Holmes business analyst or something like that. All right, that's excellent. That's fantastic. So if anyone in the audience wants to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
There's a few ways. So if you go to the metabusinessanalyst.com, there's like a contact me, and that'll send an email to me and you that I'll reply to. And my volume is not so heavy these days that there's anybody that I don't reply to. So I pretty much reply to everybody who has a question. It may not be what you want to hear, but I will definitely reply to you. You can also comment on my YouTube channel. I read every single comment. And if it's a question for me, I definitely answer it. And then of course you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not actually super active on LinkedIn. Like a lot of people like to connect with me on LinkedIn, but I don't really post anything on LinkedIn. So if you just want to be connected to me and send me a message on LinkedIn, that's fine. But you're not going to find a lot of exciting stuff from me on LinkedIn. You'll probably see more of that on YouTube or my website.
Nice. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks, Angelo. This has been an extremely not just informative. I think it's been very, very educational for the audience, especially those who watch your channel, people who watch your channel, those who are up and coming business analysts, and even those who are intermediate business analysts as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks very much. It's been a great time.
It's my pleasure.
And have yourself a very wonderful day.
Yeah, you too, man.
Okay, bye.